The subgenre that we're dealing with today happens to be a rather controversial one, given the fact that it exhibits extreme levels of gore and, dare we disregard, the dismemberment. Splatter horror pulls no punches in showcasing every gruesome little detail, sometimes even pushing the farthest points regarding blood and guts. Most of the movies falling under this category tend to leave a lasting impression thanks to the excessive graphic depiction of stomach-churning gore, keeping even the gore hounds on the edge of their seats. Also, don't worry, it's not uncommon at all on your part to wonder how a person can have so much blood spilling out of everywhere in the first place, so let's not beat around the bush any further and come straight to the topic of our video. We suggest you dim the lights, or maybe not, that's completely your call, as we take you through our list of 20 ultimate gore and splatter horror flicks that we're pretty sure your stomach can't handle. This video is categorically not for the faint of heart, so don't say we didn't warn you later. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves though, we do have one very small request. If you enjoy our content, then please support us by subscribing to the channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Now, let's begin. Dead Alive, 1992. Peter Jackson came up with this modern masterpiece of horror that was probably one of his most expensive films at the time. And while the movie, also known as Brain Dead, was a box office disaster, there was no stopping it from becoming a cult hit. No wonder Dead Alive is still widely considered one of the bloodiest flicks of all time. Now, when it comes to the storyline, it's rather simple. Timothy Balm stars as the meek Lionel Cosgrove, who lives with his overpossessive mother, Vera, in a beautiful Victorian mansion. To Vera's utter disappointment, Lionel falls in love with Paquita, the daughter of a local shopkeeper. On one of their dates at the Wellington Zoo, Vera follows the duo only to be bitten by a Sumatran rat monkey there. While this causes Vera to fall severely ill and ultimately die, she reanimates as a voracious zombie and begins to infect everyone around her. So, how do you kill something that's already dead? Truth be told, that's the entire premise of Jackson's movie, and if you ask us, it tends to work wonders in favor of the film despite featuring a highly run-of-the-mill premise. Like it or not, we're looking at a flick that happens to be a recipient of 14 awards and 7 nominations. With a screenplay by Steven Sinclair, Fran Walsh, and Peter Jackson himself, Dead Alive is a visual extravaganza for every gore hound out there, especially the ones who claim that their bloodlust has never been satiated. Believe us when we tell you that almost 300 liters of fake blood was used just for that movie's final scene. In fact, that's not all. There's a pretty famous lawnmower sequence in the film, in case you didn't know, that had blood being pumped at 5 gallons per second. You see, the thing with Dead Alive is that it literally jumps straight over a cliff, and not once does it even bother to come back to any sense of normalcy. The movie is fast-paced, witty, and most importantly, it has its own bloody charm. No pun intended, of course.
15 seconds, I'll show you.
Reanimator, 1985. It was H.P. Lovecraft's horror story, Herbert West, Reanimator, that had Stuart Gordon coming up with Reanimator, which, to be honest, was way ahead of its time. The storyline of this undisputable horror classic has the celebrated Jeffrey Combs in the role of Herbert West, an exceedingly ambitious medical student who's not only obsessed with the whole idea of overcoming death, but also dead set about proving his theory. After West's attempts to bring back his dead professor to life don't work in his favor, he enrolls himself at a different university to carry on with his research. West initially begins testing his invention, which is a reanimating reagent, on dead animals, and then moves over to experimenting with it on human bodies. In the process, he also manages to lure his roommate and fellow medical student, Dan Kane, and together they explore uncharted territory until their actions catch the attention of faculty member Dr. Carl Hill, who has his own agenda. First things first, this movie is packed to the brim with shocking moments, which certainly won't sit well with all viewers. While the amount of bloodiness this film features is incredibly disturbing and at times even nauseating, the nifty blend of horror and sick humor makes Reanimator an unquestionable horror classic. Remember the infamous scene that has the severed head of Dr. Hill sexually assaulting Scream Queen Barbara Crampton's tied up and stripped naked Megan Halsey? Well, talk about a scene being vividly graphic, and this movie here has plenty of that to offer. Furthermore, this is also Mac Ahlberg's cinematography. Richard Band's eerily similar background score, often compared to Bernard Herrmann's musical score for Psycho, and dare we disregard John Nolan, who did a banger job with the film's gruesome makeup effects, making the element of gore here attain an absurd level. Nolan later admitted that Reanimator was the bloodiest film he had ever worked on, given that he used almost 24 gallons of fake blood on the film. Well, for a person who's never used more than 2 gallons of blood per flick, this was categorically way too much. High Tension, 2003. Be it decapitated heads, slashed throats, disembowelments, or hacked body parts, name anything and this movie has it. We're talking about Alexander Aja's French slasher film High Tension, which has also been released as Switchblade Romance in a few other countries. Backed by an intriguing screenplay co-written by Gregory Levasseur and Aja, the narrative has best friends Alex and Marie going to Alex's parents' home for the weekend, only to find themselves fighting for their lives when a serial killer unexpectedly shows up on the very night of their arrival. The flick deftly juggles gore and suspense, and the twist featured in the end is definitely not something that you would anticipate. Mark our words. This film is so bloody that so many scenes were actually edited ahead of the American release, so this one's for lovers of blood and guts horror. If you have a thing for all things red, the uncut version of this movie is certainly not to be missed. This bloody, merciless, no humor, and no-holds-barred film is more like a tribute that Aja and Levasseur made to the old-school horror movies of the 70s and 80s that the duo grew up watching together. It's fitting to say that this flick is a gratifyingly gory, thrilling ride, having on display some of the most innovative death sequences. And yes, decapitations can happen with a bookcase. High Tension made sure of that. Saw, 2004. Two men trapped in a dilapidated bathroom, chained to pipes, and unaware of how they got there in the first place. Does this ring a bell? Modern-day horror legend James Wan surely gave his fans countless sleepless nights when he marked his feature directorial debut with Saw. Be honest, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the iconic phrase, "I want to play a game with you"? Well, if you ask us, there's just no going back from there, because trust us when we say this, it's either mutilated life or mutilated death. Also, if the one delivering this dialogue happens to be a creepy-looking puppet on a toddler's tricycle, you're not only going to lose your mind, you're going to lose a couple of body parts as well, and in the most gruesome manner possible, may we add. A movie as agonizingly suspenseful as Saw turns up the intensity with more graphic and nauseating gore, while amalgamating elements of survival, torture, and psychological horror to keep the audience on the very edge of their seats. Charlie Clouser's epic musical score, Lee Whannell's non-linear narrative, and dare we disregard the never-ending twists, all played a huge role in making Saw one of the most profitable horror movies ever, launching an entire media franchise. Well, there's no denying that acclaimed actor Tobin Bell in the role of Jigsaw and his perverse games inevitably happened to be one of the high points of the 2004 film. Saw is especially notorious for the ingenious traps on display that effectively manage to creep you out. Take the reverse bear trap, for instance. It's bound to make you shit your pants. Also, you don't want to be a victim of this viscerally disturbing device unless you're okay with getting your face ripped apart. Apocalyptto, 2006. Mel Gibson's masterpiece, which is set in Yucatan around the year 1502, revolves around Jaguar Paw, a Mesoamerican hunter, and his fellow tribesmen who get captured by vicious, bloodthirsty invaders who end up raiding their village. While Jaguar Paw is able to hide his pregnant wife and toddler son, he and his tribe members are enslaved and dragged away to be brutally sacrificed to the gods in the Raider Kingdom's pestilence-stricken city. While a solar eclipse momentarily spares the captives, they are taken by the raiders to their barracks in order to be used as target practice. Call it a twist of fate, Jaguar Paw manages to kill the leader's son, after which he makes a desperate attempt to come back to his family. Will he make it? Well, that's for you to find out. From the unrelenting intensity and pulse-pounding chase sequences to its sadistic barbarity and extreme levels of brutal action, Apocalyptto is a brilliant movie that left a multitude of viewers acutely disturbed upon release. Going back in time and showcasing how savagely cruel a ritual can be isn't everyone's cup of tea, so hats off to Gibson for his unforgettable portrayal of the Maya civilization as an infernal hell on earth. To call his depiction mercilessly bloody and leave it at that would surely be an understatement. After all, we're looking at a rare cinematic treat that's masterfully shot at a breathless pace, which means full credit to Dean Semler and his spectacular cinematography work. He simply manages to take us to another world. Also, the effort and attention to detail are pretty evident when you watch Apocalyptto, leaving viewers with a lasting, lingering impression. Evil Dead, 1987. Well, it's always smart when the second installment of a growing franchise realizes that repeating the same things they did with the first flick won't work in terms of the second. But Sam Raimi took his chances and came up with Evil Dead 2, a film that follows in its predecessor's footsteps pretty closely. The requel, as the movie is often termed, has Ashley J. Williams finding himself fighting for his life once again in the secluded cabin in the woods, the flesh-possessing Deadites carrying on with their deadly assault against him and a bunch of fresh human souls. Co-written by Scott Spiegel and Raimi, Evil Dead 2 simply escalates the possession terror of the first film with more blood and gore. Somehow, it tends to work wonders in favor of the film. That being said, there's no denying that the second installment is actually celebrated for its ingenuity thanks to a horde of shocking jump scares at its disposal. Honestly, what would you do if you found the badly decomposed corpse of your girlfriend dancing outside in the woods with her decapitated head? Do you think that's horrifying? Well, we've got more for you. How about her headless torso charging at you with a chainsaw? Apart from what we just mentioned, there's also the occasional eyeball popping out and flying right into open mouths, which of course is pretty disgusting. Needless to say, the special effects in this film are truly sensational, and they manage to hold up even to this day. Bone Tomahawk, 2015. S. Craig Zahler's directorial debut, which is a western to the bone, follows a small-town sheriff and his ragtag posse who venture into a desolate valley to rescue a few townspeople abducted by members of a cave-dwelling, inbred, cannibalistic Native American tribe. While Zahler's Bone Tomahawk isn't exactly a full-blooded horror flick, it's effectively more unsettling than most of those. Mind you, this is a movie that doesn't hold back, so yes, it is indisputably not for viewers who tend to get easily upset. If you ask us, we firmly believe that this flick here can put the entire Saw film franchise to shame, reintroducing the Western genre to the viewers and fusing it perfectly with just the right proportion of nail-biting horror elements surely makes Zahler quite the mastermind. Of course, the high point of this flick undoubtedly happens to be the cannibalistic troglodyte clan and their brutality on display. The gory violence is shocking to watch, and the film features quite a few sequences that are bound to scar you for the rest of your life. There's one particular scene that shows an imprisoned character brutally scalped, bisected, and then consumed. It's safe to say that as a Western and as a horror, Bone Tomahawk is a hidden gem that's frighteningly good. Terrifier, 2016. If you happen to be a fan of the mute but deadly and horrifying Harlequin, Art the Clown, then you have every reason to be happy to see Damien Leone's Terrifier in our list of the ultimate gore and splatter horror movies. Story-wise, it revolves around party-goer Tara Hayes and her sister Victoria, who become targets of the demonic and sadistic, creepy-looking clown on a Halloween night. Mark our words when we say that Terrifier follows the standard slasher formula and embraces all the usual tropes, and it tends to work wonders in favor of the film. While the psychotic, malicious clown obviously steals the show, kudos to the special effects supervisor Jason Baker, who's responsible for the overall look and execution of the practical effects, which includes the makeup and prosthetics used to create Art the Clown. Next comes the pure, unadulterated brutality that's exhibited in the movie in the form of some impressively grisly visuals. We're literally talking about no-holds-barred, merciless stuff that's pretty much capable of making you wrench and close your eyes in utter terror, if not vomiting your guts out. So if you're into flicks that feature unstoppable silent killers tormenting people for no particular reason, you should definitely check out Terrifier. Cannibal Holocaust, 1980. First things first, Ruggero Deodato's controversial gore fest isn't for the faint of heart. Effectively a found-footage horror, Cannibal Holocaust follows anthropologist Harold Monroe, who agrees to lead a rescue mission and travel to the wild Amazon rainforest in the hopes of finding a missing American film crew. Apparently, the filmmakers went missing while they were shooting a documentary on the region's primitive cannibal tribes. After a few days of trekking through the jungle, the rescue team encounters two tribes, the Yakumo and the Yanomamo. While under the hospitality of the Yanomamo tribe, Monroe discovers the skeletal remains of the missing crew and reels of their undeveloped film, which he is able to lay his hands on in exchange for his tape recorder. Only after Monroe returns to New York and watches the disturbing raw footage does he realize what truly happened to the missing, overambitious film crew. Produced as part of the contemporary cannibal trend of Italian exploitation cinema, Cannibal Holocaust had its premiere in Milan. However, the Italian courts apprehended the movie exactly 10 days later. And that's not all. Deodato was also arrested on charges of vulgarity and murder, thanks to rumors that stated many of his actors were killed on camera. It was only after the director could prove his innocence and had the actors appear in court that the charges were finally dropped. Also, in case you didn't know, The animal deaths featured in the film were real, precisely something that made this flick all the more controversial. While there's no denying that Cannibal Holocaust is overflowing with gratuitous scenes depicting rape, genital mutilation, and the occasional decapitation, one of the most brutal sequences happened to be a ritualistic forced abortion and the eventual clubbing death of the mother. This movie, we repeat, is categorically not for the squeamish, so we suggest you watch it at your own risk and with an open mind, of course. House of a Thousand Corpses, 2003. When Rob Zombie made his directorial debut with House of a Thousand Corpses, he made sure that his movie was for every fan of the macabre. No wonder the calamitous mess, as Zombie likes to address his 2003 film, gained a massive cult following in due course. Now, in terms of the plotline, it centers on 4 teenagers driving down the backwoods of Texas, hoping to write a book on offbeat roadside attractions. However, the unsuspecting group held captive by a sadistic, psychopathic, and eccentric family, an endless night of terror, torture, and murder ensues. You can't call yourself a fan of hardcore horror if you still haven't seen House of a Thousand Corpses. You see, the power of this movie lies in the fact that the screenplay, also by Zombie, covers literally every type of successful horror premise, be it a mad doctor, devil worshipper, deranged clown, serial killer, or let's say a family of crazies. You name it, and this movie has it. Please know that House of a Thousand Corpses is not about its plot or even the characters on display. The flick's primary purpose is to shock its audience by depicting bizarre, unsettling violence. It's fair to say the movie achieves that. Hostel, 2005. As one of the more well-known splatter horror movies, and for all the right reasons may we add, Eli Roth's Hostel has a group of backpackers traveling to Slovakia only to find themselves getting thrust one after the other into a sickening game of nightmarish torture at the hands of a secret, worldwide murder-for-profit organization. In short, Roth's Hostel is a film that is bound to make you repetitively squirm in your seat. While Hostel's lack of restraint in terms of blood, guts, and gore is highly unsettling to many, there are some gore hounds out there that seem to love this movie. We know the whole feeling of being tied up and tortured to death can be quite overwhelming, but then again, the film offers plenty of stomach-churning gore to make you feel nauseated. To begin with, there's Achilles tendons being sliced. Add to this some facial disfiguration by a blowtorch, and dare we disregard the good old chainsaw severing fingers, legs, and whatnot? Well, when you have the master of gore himself helming the flick and Quentin Tarantino acting as an executive producer, you ought to be prepared. Tokyo Gore Police, 2008. Please make no mistake. The title of Yoshihiro Nishimura's 2008 sci-fi horror film is not misleading, which means Tokyo Gore Police lives up to its name by being gory, perverse, and highly bizarre. Written by Nishimura, Kengo Kaji, and Seako Nakoshi, the film stars Ihai Shina as a vengeful katana-wielding police officer, one who sets out to avenge her father's death while simultaneously battling against an army of homicidal mutant humans who possess the ability to sprout bizarre biomechanical weapons from their wounds. So we're looking at a movie that takes pride in delivering as much carnage as possible in its limited runtime of 110 minutes. The amount of gore on display here will either leave you delighted or disgusted, that's for sure. In this dark and brooding world, self-mutilation is the norm, so don't be surprised by the explicit visuals of spraying blood and flying body parts. Every severed limb produces at least 30 gallons of fake blood. If you think we're making this up, do us a favor. Watch Tokyo Gore Police for yourself, and then let's have a chat about it in the comments section below. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, 1986. The ambitious sequel to Tobe Hooper's defining horror classic, otherwise known as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, this one follows radio DJ Vanita Stretch Brock, abducted by Leatherface, and his cannibalistic family. It's around the same time that a former Texas Ranger, one who also happens to be the uncle of victims Sally and Franklin Hardesty from the first movie, is hell-bent on hunting down Leatherface and his murderous pack. Will Stretch become the cannibalistic Sawyer family's next meal, or will the deranged family be stopped once and for all? Backed by a screenplay by L.M. Kit Carson, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 has a lot going for it, especially in the way of graphic blood and gore. So much so that it even surpasses the original. Of course, it's fitting to state that the sequel went ahead with its more is more theatrics, thereby upping the gut-churning gore on display. While the kills aren't as great as in the first movie, they are extremely violent and bloody, which of course does the trick. But rest assured, this film has enough shockingly explicit gore to make you squeal in horror. The Beyond, 1981. based on an original story created by celebrated Italian screenwriter Dardano Sacchetti. Lucio Fulci's The Beyond follows Liza Merrill, a young woman becoming heir to an old mansion-like hotel in rural Louisiana, which was once the site of a horrific murder and, in all probability, built over one of the entrances to hell. With Liza reacquiring the old property and wanting to restore it, she doesn't have the tiniest idea that a full-blown nightmare awaits her. There is a reason that the second film in Fulci's Gates of Hell trilogy is often ranked among his most feted works. You see, the late Fulci was a highly skilled craftsman who had his priorities straight. A coherent plotline was the least of his concerns, and all he ever wanted was to shake his audience to the very core. With The Beyond, it's safe to admit that Fulci managed to scare the living daylights out of his viewers by featuring what is probably the goriest chain-whipping scene ever. The film also features the notorious eyeball splatter scene, for which one has to give full credit to the late Gianetto Di Rossi for his incredible work on the makeup effects. The Beyond's finale is a chilling reminder of how apathetic and powerful hell can truly be, thereby solidifying the status of the movie as a true hellish horror. If you call yourself a true fan of Italian horror, you've got to see this ghastly gore fest. Dawn of the Dead, 1978. As the second flick in George A. Romero's series of zombie movies, the narrative of Dawn of the Dead has a mysterious plague reanimating the recently dead humans as flesh-eating zombies. The escalating zombie outbreak has 4 survivors taking refuge inside a deserted shopping mall. Everything goes well until a nomadic biker gang breaks into the mall, thereby letting in hungry masses of undead into the mall as well. Directed, written, and edited by Romero, the epic follow-up to Night of the Living Dead garnered a colossal cult following, along with widespread critical commendation. We're looking at a zombie horror film that's regarded as one of the best horror films ever made. In this movie, you actually get to witness the whole world coming to an end, and it's not just the adults who turn into zombies, even the kids are zombies in the film. Naturally, the violence and gore is amped up here with chopped limbs, exploding heads, and intestines being ripped apart, and we dare not disregard the gruesome flesh-eating. It is a zombie flick after all. If you happen to be a fan of Romero and have yet to see this film, be sure to see the director's cut. You can thank us later down in the comments section below. Inside, 2007. When French filmmakers Julien Maury and Alexandre Bustillo made their directorial debut with Inside, little did we realize that the film would actually be 82 minutes of uninterrupted, eye-averting terror. Well, we're looking at an extreme French horror film that follows Alison Paradis in the role of Sarah Scarangella, an expectant mother on the verge of giving birth. Sarah, who's still reeling from her husband's death and struggling to cope with her loss, finds herself viciously ambushed in her home on Christmas Eve by a mysterious scissor-wielding intruder. The whole premise of a stranger breaking into your home to cause chaos and carnage just a day before you're about to deliver your baby already has our hearts pounding. Do you see the impact this nerve-jangling movie has on us, despite us not even being pregnant in the first place? Well, that's Inside for a pitch-perfect balance of grinding tension and inventive gore. Backed by an intriguing screenplay by Bustillo, Inside is undeniably disturbing, bloody, and violent. The visceral gore and pulse-pounding suspense will keep viewers on the edge of their seats without even giving them a chance to catch their breath. Beatrice Dalle delivers an outstanding performance as the maniac housebreaker, one who makes it very clear that she's simply here to take the baby from the mother. We highly recommend that you watch Inside as soon as possible. The Sadness, 2021. Rob Jabaz marked his feature directorial debut with The Sadness, which, in case you didn't know, is heavily inspired by Garth Ennis's comic book, Crossed. The Taiwanese body horror film has a young couple trying to reunite amidst a viral pandemic that somehow transforms everyday people into homicidal, bloodthirsty sadists. Canadian filmmaker Rob Jabaz's feature directorial debut strictly falls under the category of a relatively recent horror splatterfest that has become a critically lauded success. This Asian masterpiece, which was directed, written, and edited by Jabaz, had a significant impact internationally right upon its release. The Sadness lives up to its title by embracing and disregarding convention both at the same time. By having on display plenty of graphic violence, some of which is sexual in nature, the movie tests even the toughest genre lovers. Well, there's no denying that Ennis's comic book was way more visually explicit in terms of exhibiting the atrocities that the infected were capable of. Mark our words when we say that The Sadness isn't too far behind when it comes to depicting visceral and stomach-churning gore. Day of the Dead, 1985. Did you really think we wouldn't include George A. Romero's Day of the Dead on this list? Of course, it would have been a cardinal sin had we forgotten it. The third film in the Night of the Living Dead series follows a handful of scientists and soldiers taking shelter in an underground bunker in the Florida Everglades. The purpose is to find a solution to the zombie pandemic that has ravaged the entire world, and what remains to be seen is if the human race can survive against the undead horde. Don't let this visually striking film distract you from the gore and mounting tension it features. There's no denying that Day of the Dead is generous in terms of its gory moments. This exceedingly bloody film features graphic scenes of zombies tearing people apart in the grisliest fashion. Disembowelment is a common thing, especially when it's a zombie flick, but scenes managing to hold up to this day, making us viewers feel queasy, is a different thing altogether. Well, what can we say? Day of the Dead is gruesomely charming in that way. Zombie 2, 1979. In case you weren't aware, Lucio Fulci's Zombie 2 actually serves as an unofficial sequel to Romero's Dawn of the Dead. That being said, the 1979 Italian horror film, which is written by Elisa Briganti, has Anna Bowles in search of her father, who is apparently conducting some kind of research on the Caribbean island of Matul. When her father's boat comes back without him, Anne decides to probe deeper into the matter and go to the island herself. Journalist Peter West joins her, and together they hire a boat, along with guides, to reach the island. After reaching Matul, they learn that the place is cursed by voodoo, which has the dead reanimating as zombies and attacking the living, devouring their flesh. Zombie 2 is a ghastly cannibal feast, one that's often addressed as the ultimate undead movie. There is a particular eye-gouging scene that's memorably nasty and still capable of giving us the heebie-jeebies. The flick also has a shark fighting a zombie. What more could you possibly want? Oh, and in case you didn't know, the production used a real tiger shark, heavily sedating and feeding the animal right before filming the infamous scene. Marvelous verdict! Well, that's all we got for you today, and with this, we've finally come to the end of our video. So, which of these ultimate gore and splatter horror films can your stomach not handle? Do you think we missed out on any in our list? We'd love to know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Also, the ones mentioned on this list absolutely deserve your time if you call yourself a true fan of the genre. Now, if you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Please do leave a thumbs up and stay tuned with us as we promise to be back with more exciting content in the future. Until next time, thanks for watching,